Lamptey Show. My name is Joey. This week I'm joined by Imogen
Hi, Joey.
and by Neil.
Hello, Joseph.
Moments of the last, what is it? Month? 6 weeks?
Yes, month.
Neil, do you want to start us off?
I wanted to do a happy one, but that's not possible. So I feel I have to acknowledge the departure of lovely Dom Hyam. I know kind of the rule is you can't get too upset about human beings getting another job, but I'm a little bit upset about this one just because he's been there since it's been good, and he's been so metronomic in what he does for us, and I'm just a little bit upset that he's not going to be there anymore. You can probably fix it, but I don't know if I wanted to fix it. I quite like the idea of him being around, till the end of time, and that's not going to happen anymore. So, yeah, goodbye, Dom.
I don't know. Well, obviously, everything in football is very immediate, but we can't fix it immediately.
Fix is an interesting word. We can put somebody in the same position and hope that they do okay. They won't be him, though, and that's maybe a problem.
Because did you see that interesting thing in midweek about apparently we're trying to sign a German centre back from the Netherlands and that he'd been Brexited out of our dear sweet club?
Oh yeah, the old work permit. Yeah.
Which I only think of ever really existing in Championship Manager 2000, 2001, where I could only sign like 3 African players. But apparently now we're, 20 years in the
But that doesn't make any sense anyway, that rule, because isn't it around they haven't worked enough? But so for them, working means literally playing games. But they're like, I go into work, I go to training every day, I'm still working.
Yeah.
Why does that matter? How can they pick and choose which bit is of work is important and which bit isn't? I don't know.
Quite. I think it's a huge, huge loss, Dom Hyam, obviously. Imogen, moment of the...
Yeah, I also couldn't find anything happy, so I've gone for Tony Mowbray going to Sunderland because that's
Yeah, that is happy.
marriage.
Yes.
That's
break that
really very precious.
Break that down
I
for us.
I'm absolutely thrilled that he's failed everywhere, and now he's going to fail at Sunderland. The very day that they get the cameras back for Sunderland Till I Die. I mean,
was it?
All my Christmases at once. Yeah, wonderful news.
Was that the day that Alex Neil left then?
Yeah.
No way.
It's
like he knew.
It's almost like the producers had said, their manager's gone and they've rang the club and been like, listen, we've got an idea. We'll pay his wages. They're there. The joy, unfortunately, was to be short-lived. They got sixth at Christmas. He's there in the press being like, well, we don't want to get too ahead of ourselves. Like, I wouldn't if I were you, because I've seen what you've done in the last 10 years.
I just love the response though of the Sunderland fans. They're like sort of like, "Oh, it doesn't matter. We've got a better manager now. Better manager." That whole sort of defiance.
Yeah,
Are
big
you sure?
Time. Big time.
Didn't want him anyway.
Definitely. Yeah, you've definitely got a better manager there. You've just got the guy who's got pretty much an almost unilateral history of success in his recent positions. For the guy who has got the best record up to November of anybody in the Football League. Yeah, I mean, that's truly magnificent. Yeah, so I mean, even if we go down this season, at least we've got that to look forward to. I think, I mean, there was a positive from yesterday that I'll take as my moment of the week. I mean, I thought the pitch looked nice.
Yeah.
Nice enough, yeah. Considering where we've been, yeah.
I thought, you just looked at it, you were like, it might have cost us the season, but it's in now, and they've done a great. It is nice. At times, I felt like I was watching like a really big five-a-side game, because I don't think I've ever seen a pitch look as neat as that. Because you wouldn't.
Where were you sat?
We're in the north stand behind the goal. I despise where we sit. I don't understand why we sit there. Ideally, I would sort of, because it's the big group of us that have always gone, and then there was a majority vote that moved us out of. I'd sit just on the halfway line as far at the back as possible, basically, because I think that's the best view of the game. And we're about 20 rows from the front, sort of to the left. I think it's because the people that I'm with largely want to see like the best view of a goal.
We never scored down that end.
I was going to say, I wouldn't bother.
We've had 3 goals in 3 years.
Jesus,
It doesn't make
Never,
any sense.
never happens. Yeah.
Mm.
But we were talking before we started, sort of about kind of the grinding sort of obligation that is recording this podcast, even as infrequently as we do. And I sort of think anything to do with Coventry City, I think if it's really truly enjoyed, it ceases to be kind of what it's meant for, is it? So I think I sort of think you shouldn't be sat where you want to sat when you're watching the game. It'd only add to the joy of it, and that's really not what it's about, is it?
Totally.
Speaking of which, let's dig into some of the games that we've that have gone by since we've last spoken. We're going to do 2 games because we're going to do 2 games basically. Before we start, I don't think we need to talk about Pitchgate, do we? Because we've got a new pitch, and I think we will probably. I mean, there's not more to say than it's disappointing, and it will probably have an impact on our season. But everything's been talked about, hasn't it?
Yeah,
What are we going to do?
I don't think there's anything more to be said on it. We've got one now, even though Mark was moaning that it's sandy and you can't water it.
That was one point, actually.
We've got one.
Yeah. So I reckon on your side, it must have looked all right, Joey, because it was a bit bobbly around that bit. It's like they forgot to do it or something. And so maybe that's what Mark could see, but he wasn't. I don't think he was too pleased with it. And it was a bit messed up along the touchline, but not hugely. But, I don't know how much did it cost them? $500,000? I'd want flat if I spent $500,000 on, but I don't know.
I think it cost the bottom half of Dom Hyam. But I also what I couldn't understand is it also looked like there'd been an awful lot of treading on the non-pitch side of the lines, which I couldn't quite get my head round. Does that make sense? So that like the playing surface was all fine, but then immediately afterwards, it looked like they'd been playing like a very, very thin game of rugby on that particular bit, just over the line.
But they could literally only afford up to the line. I mean, that was the budget, and beyond that, they just kept it exactly the same.
Dave Body's there with a tape measure like that. No.
Not a penny more. Absolutely not.
So Pitchgate is sort of been and gone, hasn't it? And so that's all fine. We're going to start off by talking about Millwall away. So this would have been kind of like very start of Pitchgate, wasn't it? And I think this was the game where Body's kind of post-match press conference caused a lot of a stir and everything. But we're going to talk about the game itself. Imogen, you were there. Where would you like to pick it up from?
I had to dig quite deep into my memory bank for this one. I'd consigned it to history, and I've dredged up some dark memories. So if you're looking for something to feel better about, maybe skip this bit. But no, we started all right. We were well set up. We slipped very easily into a 2-goal lead. So the first one was King Kyle, still majestic. He bludgeoned a Matty Godden flicked header past something between thigh and foot. I don't know what part of his body connected with it, but it got it over the line, and he disappeared into some sort of vortex and then came back eventually to celebrate. So that was nice. That was early doors. And then we had another maybe 28 minutes, I think they scored, from a Bidwell cross. Jokeres onto Bidwell, and then that Godden finish was sublime. He was sliding and they sort of hooked it past the keeper. It was very, very nice. So it all felt fine, and Millwall had nothing to offer other than some 10-year-old pipsqueaks on the terraces shouting obscenities about people's mothers. That was about it. There wasn't anything threatening about them. I felt very content. And then Simon Moore. It was horrible. It was just.
What do you think is going on there?
Well, exactly the same as what was going on for Sunderland, whatever that is. It was almost a carbon copy in that he was completely out of position. He clearly was never going to get the ball. I don't know what his thought process was, why he was moving there. And then everyone just waded through treacle as they watched the ball just dribble into the back of the net. It was, I don't know whether he had, the communication with the defence was no good. It seemed more like it was just an aberration from him, and he just lost his mind.
He's become, in those 3 games, like a full-blown nervous wreck. Like, he's got the technique. He's just, when there's nobody around him and he does everything he needs to, but there just seems to have been something. Maybe it was that Sunderland game, which is just kind of eking away at him, and then it's just bit by bit he's gradually been the cause of pretty much every goal we conceded this season. And I mean, it's gonna wear away at you, I think. So I don't. It shouldn't be terminal. I don't know how you fix it. I mean, because he's got to play eventually again, but I think taking him out probably was the only thing they could do at the moment, because he's too liable.
It's just weird that last season he seemed to be the kind of picture of mundane competency.
Yeah.
So I don't think he was and I mean this as a compliment, even though it doesn't sound like it, but I didn't think he was terribly thrilling last season. But I thought he was, like, very unremarkably impressive, which I guess is like high praise for a goalkeeper, I think. But
yeah, regular.
It's just he's come back a completely different man.
Yeah, and even for the third goal was a mess as well. He had a lot of time to get down. That it wasn't going fast, and it just sort of, he couldn't get down to his right in time, and it didn't feel like the kind of mistake he would have made last season. So I don't know whether something's gone on close season. Wasn't he linked with somewhere else?
Well, yeah, and Bournemouth, to be.
Yeah.
Bournemouth's second choice keeper, although presumably after the Liverpool game, possibly the first choice keeper fairly quickly. But I don't know whether that's incredibly. One, we don't know whether that's actually true or whether it's just the sort of thing that you read in the newspapers. I also don't know whether, I wonder. I suppose it's different for every individual, but does something like that immediately translate into, what is that? So if you've wanted to move somewhere else, presumably he's not deliberately thrown them in his own net. But I'm not suggesting that either. Like I'm saying, I'm actually ruling that out. But then what happens then? Is it a lack of concentration, or is it like a sort of you cross? It's hard to sort of compute if that is the case. How does that then translate into decreased levels of performance?
So I don't think it does. I think they are separate things. I think he made a mistake, and what's happening now is the consequence of that mistake. So I don't know what that mistake. That Sunderland, mistakes happen. He made a bad call. He didn't really dominate. First game of the season, maybe he wasn't concentrating how he should have been, but it seems to be the mistakes that keep coming now are just kind of, it's playing on his mind, and it's playing with his judgment, and he's not being as assertive as he should be. And, the goals against, pretending Hull didn't happen, but the goals against Hull were pretty much just a lack of any kind of dominance in the box from him, really. He needed to be kind of controlling that 6-yard box, and he really wasn't. And, I just think it's very human. I don't know how you fix it, but I kind of feel like that's how it's come about.
It was Ben Wilson in goal last night. Imogen, is that something that you would, roughly speaking, support, or would you keep on with more?
Oh, I think for this particular occasion, I think we've discussed this previously. I don't think Wilson is a terrible keeper. I think he makes some bizarre decisions occasionally. I think Moore is a better keeper. But in this situation, if Moore is the kind of player who benefits from taking time away, and Robbins will obviously know that better than we do, but if Robbins thinks he needs a bit of a rest out of the glare of the supporters' wrath, then maybe. I don't have anything against Wilson. I just prefer Moore there.
So this is that we are. Yeah. So pick up from there, Millwall.
So I mean, Moore didn't cover himself in glory, obviously, but the huge turning point was obviously Gus getting sent off. The first offence was it was just I think he just went in late on a tackle. Was the first booking, but that second booking there was no need for it. There was no threat from them. It was in our own half. And we were behind the tackle. And when I saw it in real time, I thought that he had stuck his foot in, but he doesn't. His foot's nowhere near. It's sort of a body charge. And again, we were talking about this earlier, don't give the ref a decision to make in that situation. Just there is no need. What I found interesting was when he went off, Robbins put his arms around him, talked him all the way to the tunnel. Then he sent one of his minions down to speak to Gus. I don't know whether he was playing whale music to him or something, but he was very much involved with Gus all the way through. Now, I thought, I don't know of another player that he would do that to. And then in the post-match, he sort of dug him out a bit and said, well, you know, you can't afford to do that in this heat. And it was hot. It was so hot. It was the 34 degrees day.
Oh, it was. Oh, God.
Oh, it was grim. Oh, public service announcement to those supporters. That was not a day to wear polyester shirts. Please do not do that again. The risk of fire is just too great.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought that was an odd decision from not an odd decision. I just thought it was unusual for Robbins to be so protective, considering it was entirely his fault.
Do you think he was being protective, or he was just being subtle? You know, arm around the shoulder, but he's really saying some really threatening words to him.
You're a fucking idiot. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know.
Listen, you think it's bad what I'm saying to you now. Wait till Lady gets in here later.
Such a weird one, though, wasn't it? It was just like you say, he didn't really tackle. But I think he just had no idea how to deal with that situation. Him being him is always, I've got to stop the attack. Also, he knew he was on the yellow card. You could see the way he went in. That's not Gus going in normally. He just got in the way, and you know, he did neither. He stopped it, got in the way, he chucked his body in the way, and it was like, well, you're going to get sent off for it. But it wasn't even full blown Gus. It was just him being in the wrong place at the wrong time, really. But that's just again another sort of cause and effect thing where he gets himself booked for something, and he was furious anyway, wasn't he? Because didn't he get absolutely slammed early on in the game? It was. Something happened, and you know, somebody did to him what he does to everybody else, and he didn't.
You're right. I'd forgotten about that. Yeah, and the Millwall fans went wild about it, saying that he should have been sent off at that point, and the other player got booked. Yeah, I don't know. It was unnecessary.
I don't really give a damn about Hammer's discipline record. I think it's an occupational hazard. If you want someone who's going to aggressively dominate a midfield like that, they're going to get booked and sent off quite a lot. I just think I want him to keep playing how he plays, which is right on the very edge. And I think we benefit from that a lot, because I think he really badly unsettles a lot of midfields. And I think it must be really horrible. Like when Patrick Vieira was in the Premier League, getting absolutely battered by someone, and then they collect the ball and they like spray a 50-yard pass directly to someone's feet. You must be like, oh, give me a break.
Who is this guy? Yeah.
It must be really, really dispiriting to get look up from the floor and be like, oh God, he's really a lot better than I am. I think if we tried to quell him, I think we lose a lot of I think he gets off on that.
I firmly agree. Yeah. But if that's when Trippier got sent off and then wasn't sent off for Newcastle, and he said afterwards, I had to take him down. That's fine. You are taking one for the team. There was no need for Gus to even go anywhere near this guy. There was no reason. We were still in control of the game. We could easily have drawn or won it. And then he just lost his head, and that irritates me. It wasn't.
He never had his head. There's never been a point where he's had his head. I was trying to explain him to someone at work, and I was saying he gets a lot of yellow cards by breaking up opposition attacks, but that sometimes, like you say, a lot of players would see that as something that was like a necessity. Whereas for him, he's like, I haven't been booked yet, and I need to take this guy down. So I'm going to try and kill him. Like I'm going to.
This is the problem, isn't it? It's like
I'm going to really. I know I'm getting a yellow card anyway. I'll just hurt him as much as I can. I don't think you needed to do that. Like you could have just tripped him
Yeah.
over it and it had the same effect. He's like, nah. It's
I
not
think
right.
that's probably what Mark doesn't like. He's like, I don't want to. It's the whole Rooney thing as well, isn't it? You don't want to curb the madness because that's what makes him what he is. But then also, when he, like you say, he's 30 minutes in, somebody's just beat him for the ball, and he's like, oh, fuck this, I'm not having this, and just thousands for the sake of it. It's like, you probably don't need to do that, Gus.
I don't know. I don't want to see him stop doing that. I think it's very fun. So yeah, he went, and then what happened?
And then we all turned to shit. But I mean, there were definitely positives to take out of the game that I had forgotten. I think Gyökeres could have had one, possibly two on another day. They were marking him quite well, but he still, he still had flashes of last season. Bidwell looked much more comfortable in a wing back position than he had last year. I felt last season that unless he was in central defence, I didn't want him anywhere near. But I think he looked right, and he seems to have carried that through to Preston. I didn't watch any of the Hull. I couldn't tell you what happened at Hull. Don't know. But did he play? I don't. Who can say? But he looked much better. Dabo was much more on it. His pace was better. His positioning was so much more improved. And I'm going to whisper this very quietly, but Ben Sheaf was superb that day, which it doesn't pain me to say it. It just surprises me.
There's become quite a sort of Ben Sheaf's become quite sexy from what I can tell on. I'm not about him like the man himself necessarily, but I think there's a bit of kind of like Metro love for him. Do you know what I mean? Like I think he's become sort of like quite a desirable figure amongst some people. Not for you, though, no?
Not for me, no.
Neil?
I thought he was.
Yeah, he's a smashing footballer, isn't he? He's that's my take on it. Yeah, he really is. But I don't even want to whisper it quietly anymore. Like I think it's okay. The thing about Ben Sheaf is like for a long time, he always did these little things, but he also then gave the ball, to the opposition and let them score, and those things annoyed you. He hasn't been doing that as much recently, and his stature in the matches is starting to grow more regularly. And I'm more than happy to say to Benjamin, well done. This is what we wanted from you. And it's getting better from him more regularly, and that's kind of the key. And I think the idea of him being sexy in a football sense is on the money, really. I think he's started to kind of control the match, no matter who he's playing against, in a really, really good way.
I don't want him to be sexy. I just want him to not give a goal away, and he didn't do that. And I thought
he's trying his hardest not to do that. Actually, he's getting better.
I
can't remember the last time. I can't remember the last time he did. I can't remember the last time he did something really stupid. Yeah. Which is to be said, a lot to say for him. Because when he did join, that was basically all he did.
Yes. But because he came from Arsenal, some people wouldn't hear of it. And now I'm coming slowly round to the idea that perhaps he's all right, but very slowly. I'll give it another half season. I'll give you my full opinion then.
I was very surprised that he was the one that was taken off yesterday.
I don't like that. I think the only reason he's doing this is because Jamie Allen can literally run forever, and he just keeps him on all the time. I mean, I think the idea that Jamie Allen has small legs is getting more and more annoying to me because everybody has to play to that fact. But yeah, I don't know why he's taken Sheaf off, and he seems to do that a lot. It's either Sheaf or Hammer, and Allen's the one he keeps on always. It must be a fitness thing. It must be.
He also won one terrific header, Allen did yesterday, from off one of their centre halves around about the halfway line, where you really thought you had to be impressed with Preston centre backs yesterday because they had a lot of quite good balls floated in that they just dealt with over and over again. But there was one particular header on the halfway line where you looked at it and thought, I'd be really embarrassed. I would have really ruined my day if I was a 6'3" centre back, and I was like, I really misjudged that.
It's crazy. He lives in Lem, and I walked past him, and I'm a small enough guy. He is very small, and this is how bad my ego is, right? He was walking the opposite side of the road, and I kept looking over, and he kept looking back. And in my mind, I'm thinking, he's watched my YouTube video when I called him small. I reckon he's looking. It's like, maybe not. Maybe he's worried that I'm just staring at him relentlessly. I don't know.
Yeah, possibly.
Did you speak to him?
Oh, no, he was over the. I don't speak to people I know over the other side of the road, so I wasn't gonna make that effort. But if he was on a night out, absolutely, I would have made a beeline for him. But no,
Sure.
I ran.
What percentage of Cov players do you reckon live in Lem?
It's a big one. I've seen so many. Simon Moore's been knocking about. All the old ones still live there. Oh yeah, by last night, Morosi, Bayliss, and Shipley in the family zone stand just stood there.
Oh, were they?
And some. I think it was a Shrewsbury captain. I don't know why I think that. I just think he looked like somebody who was.
Are they all? They're all at Shrewsbury, presumably. Is that the club that's now what Bristol Rovers was? They've got all of the Cov players.
Yeah, version 2.0. It's you've got Da Costa there as well. So yeah, they were all there last night. It was quite good.
I like the fact that Da Costa's like, did you say you were going to the
Guys,
no, that was another day. Yeah, okay. Is that
Okay.
Is that enough Millwall chat, or is there anything that we've missed?
Yeah, I don't think the only thing I've got in my notes that I hadn't read out was Mark ending his interview with "Life's not fair."
Really?
Oh,
God.
Yeah.
Poor
Life's
Mark.
not fair. Yeah, I think he's in a very dark place. Very dark.
He's cross, isn't he?
I don't like it. I feel bad for him.
No, I feel a bit like the relationship is about to end, and I'm clinging on, and I don't want to feel like that. I need to be reassured.
They need to make a big gesture, don't they? A big gesture.
I need an arm around my shoulder and whale music, please. I don't like it.
Yeah. Right, Neil, Preston. Before you start, I want to talk to you about a sort of mental phenomenon that I experienced yesterday. I want to know whether you had the same thing. I had a sort of a brain short circuit that sort of kept going on, which was watching the game and seeing the opposition and going, I don't know who this is. And then my brain going, it's Preston. And then my brain going, well, why do they look like that then?
Why do they look like Blackburn 93?
And Paul, I said it to Paul yesterday, and he was like, no, I'm having the same thing. And he said, I think what's not helping either is the fact that they've got red and black stripes from the front, and then when they turn round, it's all red. So not only did it feel like you weren't watching Preston, it felt like you were watching two other teams that were playing. And the entire game, I struggled to, because I'm not sure I've ever watched them in anything other than white.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. It confused the hell out of me as well. Yeah, I totally agree.
Anyway, aside from that, how was the game?
Yeah, it was. It felt like the game that I expected it to be, really. I think after what's gone on in August, it's been a pretty rotten month, and the matches. So, the previous matches haven't gone our way, but broadly, performance-wise, we've done some good stuff, and it's just inexplicable defence has really kind of cost us quite heavily. We scored 5 goals away from home, and we've only got 1 point, so it's not great. And you could just kind of sense an unfamiliarity about the team yesterday, especially. I mean, I certainly, when I looked at the team lineup compared to kind of the dream lineup from last season, there was only kind of 4 players remaining from the kind of the optimum team from last year, and it was just kind of, it didn't feel as familiar, which for me always makes it harder for you to then kind of get a grip of the game or kind of have real control over it. I don't think you can't win games from a completely new lineup and all that sort of stuff, but I just felt like the fluidity that we're so used to last season, the more we have to try and tinker to find a solution to the fact that we haven't won in 4 games, the harder it might be to get back to that, because you're just having to have a punt on players. And I just looked at the lineup, and Eccles hasn't started the season particularly well. He seems kind of very off, and I rate him. I think he's got the potential to be a good player, but he doesn't seem particularly comfortable over there. And then you've got Waghorn being one of the more important positions on the pitch. You think about the O'Hare position, where he's got so many kind of relationships with all the players that he has to link up with, and to replace him with Waghorn, who has struggled in his entire career so far, was an interesting one, because
has he? Because I was told he was absolutely amazing yesterday.
Well, yeah, I was going to get onto this point. So he was involved, And I think for him, involved is a step up. I think he's so used to kind of
I
not
would
being
agree
able
with
to get
that.
into the game,
Yeah, that's fair enough.
not being able to get into the game at all. So his involvement was heightened, and he was getting on the ball. The problems were still there, though. Wavelength wise with other players, he's just not on it with anybody. I mean, his passes were behind other players. He was making the wrong call, and I don't want to criticize him for like his willingness to try and do some shit, because he was putting himself in the right position. But I still think the quality wasn't there. But people are happy with him yesterday, or many people are happy with him yesterday, because it was like, oh, he was actually involved, and you can see it, which for him is good. But that my overriding point of the kind of the match in the first half specifically was I just felt unfamiliar with the team. I think everybody was trying to find their feet. There were some decent kind of performances. I thought Doyle, who kind of eased his way into the game against Hull, did the same yesterday, but once he got going, I think he really kind of started to assert himself. He's bigger than people think. He's pretty strong, and he's got a good stride about him, and he had a great shot as well. That him
He
and
had a
Panzo shooting from
fantastic
30
shot.
yards. Yeah, I mean, it's like one of these days, one of those is going to go in, and we're going to be very, very happy.
He's a big 18-year-old, isn't he?
He is, isn't he? And
Or is he 19 maybe?
Maybe
God.
19,
I'll
but
look it up now. I mean,
the
I
baby
think
face thing, isn't it?
he's very. It's not even the height; it's the filled outness for a player that
Yeah.
is the same age as. And I know that everyone is different physically and blah 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 blah. But that a player, he's only 18. He's 19 in October,
Wow.
and when you think of Ben Turner, for example, at that age, Ben Turner was obviously very tall, but that looked sort of Bambi-ish. Callum Doyle is like a thick-set Rooney, like it's very like he looked like the sort of guy you'd see in the pub rather than.
Yeah, he's got there quickly as well, hasn't he? Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah. I thought in
But
the second half he was great. I thought
yeah,
I thought he really, really shone.
I think that's the thing with. So I'll keep going on about familiarity, and you've got different players in different positions. And for me, if we could retain basically as much of the core team from last season and kind of replace some of the people who have been lost. So Panzo, not Panzo. So you had Clark Salter last year. He was kind of the primo left-sided centre back. You needed to replace him with someone. So you've got two options there, Panzo and Doyle, and I think it's going to be a good fight between both of them, because I think they've both got bring some quality to the team. Like you mentioned earlier, Imogen, I think Bidwell is slowly starting to settle himself in that left wing back. I don't think he's Maatson in terms of what he brings us from a kind of quality perspective and how he interacts with the attacking players, but I think him being able to play that position and actually offer something, and you don't notice it until you really kind of watch him, but he's a proper tank. He does not stop running. I mean, I can't admit to being very fit, but just watching him go up and down that pitch and keep going when you just imagine how knackered he is. I mean, I was really impressed actually. I think if he can keep going, and signs of kind of the player that we were told he was from Swansea, his ability to kind of get forward and create and help get the ball in the box. I think he did quite a bit of that yesterday, and it was useful.
The player I believed we were signing from Swansea was one that was coming to us because they didn't do enough of that stuff, and that Russell Martin wanted someone who was going to be more overtly like that, albeit that Bidwell can do it. The thing that I liked so much about Bidwell yesterday was I'm obsessed with getting men in the box, which I know sounds like a very kind of reductive football in theory, but I think it does help when you put crosses in for someone to be there. And I thought that I was really impressed by Bidwell's ability to. I thought his crossing and everything was fine, but that he had that header that nearly went in, and that I thought he kept when the play was coming from the right, he kept ending up at the back post.
Yeah.
And like you say, the energy required to get up and down like that, to get as far as the entire opposite end of the pitch to the point of the touchline, must be absolutely insane over the course of 90 minutes. But I was really impressed with how much of a sort of an option he gave us when it came to sort of a shot or a header or whatever. I thought he did well yesterday.
Yeah, he was our main threat. I mean, in some sense, like
Yeah,
say, he had that header from the. Well, I don't know if it was actually came off him, but yeah. And he's had a few chances to score really this season already. He's got that back post. He's getting in there, so I imagine he'll get some goals this season. And it kind of appeases me a little bit in terms of the worry I had. So I still have a little bit of worry about the fact that we don't have that kind of balance between a Dabo-esque kind of player and then a Matson-esque player on both sides. I think that style really suits us, where you've got that very dynamic, kind of silky, can interact with Hamer and O'Hare, that the kind of a quality and a technical level better. But I think if he can keep doing that.
I haven't seen Teo yet, but I believe that that's who he is.
Well, this is an interesting one, isn't it? Because there's two schools of thought here. So there's one that says that he's basically been sent back because he's not good enough. But then if you listen to Robbins' interview from 6 days ago, he's kind of saying, he's just getting settled. He's still really raw, but I really like him. I feel like he wants to give him a chance at some point, but it's just going to take a little bit of time for this guy to kind of just get himself settled and play some games and stuff. So, yeah, I think, like you say, when he came, the idea was that he's just this kind of really energetic, skillful left wing back.
Ludicrously attacking left wing back, I think, as well, is the other thing. He's like
although Robbins did say that he's like endless energy as well. So whoever plays that has to have it. So the idea that you've got somebody with more than Bidwell would be pretty impressive. So I don't know what's happened with that.
Can you imagine how tiring it is to be a professional footballer in the first place, and then to pick the most tiring position? I don't know how fun football could be if you
I almost
constantly
died.
sprint the length of the pitch.
I played at Pride Park in the summer, like proper 11-a-side game. We rented out the pitch and everything, and they put me on right wing. They have this idea that I'm fit, like I'm deceptively old. I'm not fit, and it ruined my day because it was just like constantly shouting to get forward, constantly shouting, and all I could do was just run and then be tired and then not be able to get back. And it's just like, stop doing this to me. I know it's not comparable because these people have actual fitness levels, but it's so hard. Big picture.
How fit would you have to be to not come off after 90 minutes? Absolutely dead.
Crazy.
Playing wing back.
Having to do that, and that's why when you see people, and actually a really good example of just how fit these players are. Do you remember the goal that we scored against Bristol City back in the last season? Last minute, Hamer jumped in, nicked the ball away. I mean, his legs must have been jelly by that point, and he still somehow managed to conjure up a run from his own half right to the edge of the box. And it's just like, these players, they are robots, and we just expect them to be able to run always at full pelt. We're idiots, really, when we stand on the side of the pitch.
The opposite end of that scale, however, is because it was Preston that we played this week. Was the Musa goal was on the internet, and he did not look fit at that point.
True statement.
He did not. He hadn't even been playing wing back. This is a guy who largely sort of stood in one position, waiting for the ball to come near him. But by the time it comes to the 97th minute in that game, he was like, "I think I'm about done, lads."
Yeah. Let's shoot. Musa, you're 40. Now I'm going to shoot.
Just hitting it.
Worth it.
Yeah.
Worth it.
So continue on from there.
Yeah, so I mean, at half time it was one of those where everybody around you is kind of, because they haven't conceded a goal all season, they've only scored one. The whole it's got 0-0 written all over it kind of approach was the mantra. I didn't think it necessarily was going to be that way. I mean, was it first half where Ben Wilson almost got sent off? So I actually felt like they looked like they could still score, because I just thought they kept getting in behind, and McFadden's isn't that quick, and Wilson didn't seem to have the judgment in terms of when he should come and when he shouldn't come, and he ended up just being in no man's land a few times, really. And I don't know what you guys thought. I've only seen it once, and that was at the time. It felt like he took him out, and you want that guy to be sent off if it's against you. I think he got very, very lucky.
We talked about it before we started. Strangely, my gut feeling was I wasn't terribly I think it should have been a red, especially in retrospect, but I wasn't terribly surprised when it wasn't, because even though Wilson is the last man, I think to get past Wilson, the player has got to go either side of him, and I think if he goes either side of him, I think one of them defenders covers.
That's literally what saved him, wasn't it? The fact that there were people there.
They're just close enough by that even though he's the last man, if he's going to do anything other than shoot, and he couldn't have even shot because it would have just hit Wilson because it was at point blank range. But I still think it's a red because he is the last man. I think
Yeah.
you could, if you were him, you could argue, well, I could have shot and I could have scored. I think in
Yeah.
real life he wasn't gonna, because
Mhm.
I think the angle was blocked off, but I don't think that's the point. But I think that in real life, I think if you're the ref, it's such a difficult decision to make, because I think you go, I think he's the last man, but I also think probably somebody gets back and covers him. But if you're the ref, you only get to see it once, don't you?
Yeah, I think he was happy, the idea that there were players around him. It at least validated his idea that he could make that decision. And when it was yellow,
Yeah.
obviously they'd be pissed off, but nobody's going to look at that and say, well, there was nobody around him. There were mitigating circumstances, and it was just one of those where I think we got off the hook there, just because it more often than not that tends to go against us. But that was a warning, and to be honest, it happened a couple of times in the second half as well, where
Yeah,
the
they
ball
really
was
should have
dropped,
scored.
and I was like, shit, why can't we judge these at all? And I think a lot of it's just down to, again, familiarity, like just not being quite used to what McFadson's able to give and that sort of stuff. So it was, I think, shot stopping, Wilson did excellently actually last night. He saved a lot. He made a big impression that way, but I just think there were some ropey moments as well.
As well, I'd have been so pissed off as a Preston fan, because not only was his shot stopping decent, I thought he had a really good game apart from the when he should have got sent off. Is actually they broke a number of times, and they were largely one on one, and there was two occasions where all it would have needed was the player to go either side of him and they would have
Yeah.
scored, and he stands up and saves it. And if you're a Preston fan, you're thinking he shouldn't even be here.
Yeah.
Like the first
Yeah.
one is a test. He's like, "Yes, don't take the guy down." Right? Okay, brilliant. Okay, and then like that practice has sort of like
Yeah.
strengthened his ability to stop the goal of the next two. But and there was the other one. I mean, weirdly for a 1-0, and everyone's like, "Oh, that's no surprise because of what's happened." We hit the bar twice, and Preston missed 3 1-on-1s.
Yeah.
And they also
clean
had that
goals.
moment in the second half where somebody does really well to put someone off, and then Doyle comes sliding in to take it away from someone, when that really should have been a goal as well. So I thought there was I thought there was loads of opportunities in it. Generally speaking, I thought it was quite an open game.
I think open's the right word, because I don't think it was necessarily controlled by either team. They weren't doing things within their full control. It just kind of, things kept kind of bumbling to
Breaking,
into the right place, and it felt like it was going to be that sort of game. And they're a really interesting team at the moment, because you don't know whether this not conceding a single goal all season is absolutely just a freak thing, or whether they really have set up and they've done something magical, because they didn't look. I mean, I thought if we'd had a little bit more about us, we could have had them. We got the ball in behind a few times. They didn't seem entirely dominant. It was just one of those games where there's a lot going on at our club at the moment, and we're now in this kind of pressure situation where, even though we know we've got 3 games in hand, blah blah blah, we've got a lot to catch up on. And I think last night was the stress of that situation as well coming to a head a little bit.
How did you feel the atmosphere was at the end? I asked because I was listening to Robbins's post-match interview, which is trippy, and he sort of hinted at, and then removed the idea of the hint, and then sort of hinted at it again, that the fans were getting on their backs and that they shouldn't be doing that. But how did you feel about it?
Yeah, I kind of think he wanted to say something, but also I think some of that was probably just post-match fury. He probably heard there was booing, and there was some noises, probably more so than we'd normally get, because last season it was all such a great fun season, and more often than not at home we looked all right, so you kind of accept it. I mean, the fact is, it's a very interesting thing supporting a football team, and I think there was just that kind of nervousness came, certainly around my area. There was some nervousness and tension earlier than you'd normally expect it, but I didn't think it was too bad. I didn't think it was like something that would really kind of distract the players any more than normal. There was some kind of, like, say, frustration that things weren't going our way and when passes go astray, but I don't think that was much different to normal, really. I think he's just, I think he's a little bit furious at the moment, isn't he? He's just trying to. I don't actually care if he can have a go at us all he likes. I really don't mind, because most football fans need someone to have a go at them, because most football fans are idiots. So just I'd love the fact that he wouldn't be scared of doing that. I mean, I kind of like that about him. It's one of the good reasons about him being our manager. Really, we needed somebody who was that strong of mind that they were happy to tell people, all the whole stuff about keeping off the pitch last season is all, well, hilarious. Also, really good that he was able to kind of just tell people to get off, get out, don't ever want you back, that sort of stuff. It's like, yeah, nice one, Mark. I wish you come sat next to me. It'll be much easier for me. But how did they get onto that? I don't know. Yeah, I don't think the atmosphere was too bad, really. I think, we just need... It was problematic because it wasn't really us compared to what we had last season. The team was very different. It was all a bit unfluid, but I think we'll have to find a way to win something, and then maybe we can start to settle ourselves a bit more.
I thought it was interesting that the first proper songy song that I remember was in the second half when Harmer started warming up and people sang his song. But I think when you look at that, that's more indicative of the fact that he wasn't starting. O'Hare is injured, and Gyökeres is last season was the undisputed main man, and he's not this season. He's sort of floating amongst a couple of other attacking options. And so
it's going to be interesting, isn't it?
But I don't think it was a bad atmosphere. I thought it was perfectly fine, but it was sort of, it was a late summery evening game, wasn't it? No doubt.
As expected, I think. I didn't feel, it was anything there which was like, oh, hang on, that's a bit over the top. Like, there was no raucous boos at the end of the match or anything. Everybody's just a bit pissed off and frustrated because, you want to win matches, and it's really shit seeing us bottom of the league. Regardless of the circumstances, I don't think that's not going to take. I'm not going to be happy with that, and I don't want to be bottom, and I don't think we should be bottom.
I think we could have had our home games postponed and also not been bottom, couldn't we?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
it makes things hard, makes things really difficult because it becomes more than football. Then suddenly, whether people that you've got 4 or 5 games in hand, but the pressure on top of everything else, all those away games in a row, and then suddenly you haven't got what you wanted. Mainly due to kind of real mad errors rather than the fact that I think, we played good against Millwall and then we kind of bottled it a little bit. But there were still good signs against Sunderland as well. It was a decent match and things didn't quite go well for us. But then you've got this kind of, you can't then play for another 2 weeks. And you look at the table and suddenly the extra pressure of knowing, shit, I've really got to win this game. Otherwise, we're just going to get cut adrift. And before you know it, you can win 2 games and still be in the relegation zone because things have gone wrong. So I don't want to blame... Well, I blame the grass, obviously, for all of what's happened. But it's just like, that's what pissed me off, really, because we were on such a high after everything that happened last season. And I was really kind of positive that even if we lost one of the big 3, we would do something, we'd be able to do something. And then it turns out we lose Hyam, O'Hare's out for ages. Hamer gets booked, sent off in the second game. So we miss him for the first month. And these things, you take away key components quite quickly and suddenly it doesn't feel the same.
Quick question for you while it's in my head, Neil. What did you think of Casey Palmer when he came on last night?
He reminded me of Casey Palmer against Hull, actually, where I didn't expect him to be quite as intense as a player. He really does throw himself into the game. He kind of chases down, does well at blocking. I think he's one of the prime examples of a player who, in that position, is actually key because suddenly you've got, if you have O'Hare, it's fine. He knows everybody around him. He links up things really well. You don't have him, you've suddenly got somebody who has to, like I said earlier, kind of build relationships with so many different players around them. And it can happen. And I think he looks like he's got something about him, but whether that's enough to kind of replace O'Hare for 6 weeks in that position, I don't know. I think he might be more used to us away from home. I think his energy is really useful. And I think, like I say, against Hull, I think he was really quite kind of dynamic and pushing and pressing and making it life really difficult for them, which was good. It was kind of the opposite of, I'm trying to think of a really lazy player, Tyler Walker. I don't know if I mean that or not, but somebody, it's just very, very opposite of him. So yeah, I'm happy to see more of him. I think that's where I'm going with that.
Tyler Walker? Is that your really lazy guy?
I don't know. I'm just copying football fans, and they all say he's lazy, don't they? So is that right?
I don't think of him as being terribly. Well, I've got to give the caveat that I haven't been to as many games recently as everyone.
You haven't been on Twitter recently. That's all the problem is. Like, that's just what they say, isn't it?
Yeah, but the less you can be on Twitter, the better.
Yeah, I don't mean that. Maybe I don't mean that. I don't think I mean that. Who else?
No, I think No, I think I know what you mean. I think it is, but yeah, I guess I think as well is that I think there's a massive sentiment of Portsmouth fans who described him as lazy, isn't there? I suppose, which I had only recently become aware of. So I think maybe there's some of it is in that. I'm trying to think who the benchmark for a lazy Cov player would be, kind of all time.
There's someone recent, and it's gone out my head. Somebody who recently everybody just called lazy all the time, and it was a striker. Who was it? Obviously, it was a striker. Did people call Liam Best lazy? It wasn't Liam Best.
Oh yeah, but we're talking about a kind of that's a bit of more of a bit of an era thing for me in the way that I think a lot of gentlemen that look like that might have been described as lazy.
I hadn't even considered that, but yeah, okay.
Yeah, I
Yes.
didn't think. But there was no insinuation of that on your part. But there was,
No,
do you know what I mean?
no.
Like players that haven't even played for us, are like, yeah, I think he might be a bit lazy. Like, I think you might be a bit something. Keith O'Neill. Did Keith O'Neill even have the
No,
chance to be
no,
lazy?
he never had
Lazy
the
or crippled?
chance.
I
Yeah,
don't know.
He's-
he was
that's a very
forever at rest. He did
that's
not.
a very that's a very Tory way of looking at disability, isn't it? He was fine. He was just lazy.
Oh god. I don't know
You
why I
would have
can't think of the archetypal lazy person. There's
you would
somebody
have
of
thought this
recent
would
era.
have been.
Yeah. It's just
I would have thought so. I would think early era Max Biamu. I would have described as kind of when I
people
first the
did, didn't
first
they? Yeah.
when he first came in, he just looked like he couldn't be asked, which was unbelievable. And then all of a sudden, he had this huge, almost sort of like very early renaissance, where it was like a few months in, all of a sudden he just
Yeah.
transformed into a much more dynamic player. I remember we played a pre-season game at Nuneaton that I went to, where I just was like, "What is going on here? Like, this guy's not only come from non-league, like he's not even trying."
I remember
Um,
Kevin Kyle being quite lazy, but that might just have been because everyone hated him, and he just thought, "What's the point? I
Yeah, I
won't."
did
think
you?
it ended up like that, didn't it?
Yeah.
Were you? I mean, everyone hated him. Almost suggests that you were not on board with
No,
that.
I was part of the everyone. Yeah,
I think I think that
part
was
of
a
the
pretty
mob.
fair. Yeah.
He was terrible. It was very bad, very bad.
Okay. Right. So we've talked about Casey Palmer. We've talked about Preston. We've talked about Millwall. Let's round things off with a kind of magic wandy type question. What would you do, Imogen, first? What one thing would you do to kind of improve our current predicament? And I'm thinking on the pitch specifically.
Oh,
That what
Joey.
that one thing might just be crack on, lads.
Yeah, I'm really struggling to work out what the difference is between this season and last, because we haven't had a huge influx of players. We only lost Hyam, well, it feels like minutes ago, but what, a few days ago? Um, it's not that there haven't been wholesale changes apart from the pitch. So now that we have the pitch back, I am putting all my faith in the fact that it was down to those blades of grass, and we're going to be absolutely fine now. Wednesday didn't count. That's what I do. Carry on as normal.
Neil?
Somewhere along the same lines. So I've just looked at Twitter just to check we haven't signed anybody, and we've said we've concluded all our business. So that's that. That's kind of breaking news, which won't be breaking tomorrow. But yeah, I'm the more I'm looking at it, I just think, like you say, we haven't changed hugely from last season, but there are changes, like enforced changes. So the Heim one, I think people say, oh, you can just put Rose in there, which I think broadly over the course of a loads of games you can do, but I don't think you can discredit the fact of just how well Hyam was able to kind of stabilise the defence. So I think that it'll be a tricky one. I think for me, what I would like to do is keep as much of the core of the thrust from last season playing, so I don't like, to be honest with you, I don't like that Eccles is the player that will play in right wing back. I think Darbo is the number one shot there, and I think you need to, especially with how kind of fragmented the month's been, you need to give them an opportunity to kind of build and continue to kind of play, especially after last season where he couldn't really get a run of it. I think he is number one in that position, and it's nice to see that Bidwell's doing the same on the left hand side. So for me, critical position is the O'Hara position. Everywhere else, kind of, you can slot people in, and with games, I think we can continue playing the way we have done, because what's happened to the date, most of it has been down to kind of error rather than the fact that we've been hugely shit. I don't think we have been. We've just not really. We've had some really bad kind of errors costing us goals. The biggest issue will just be, can we find somebody to kind of plug the gap until O'Hara's back up and running? And because that really is the difference between the style of attack that we have. You know, the fact that we can, before we would have him breaking with Hamer to one side, and you've got Gyökeres as an option. You've got both the wing backs. That is a real threat. If you don't have that speed, you know, other people aren't then inclined to maybe follow Waghorn in the same way that they would have done O'Hare. And I just think that is going to be the critical point. And I don't know what the answer is. I don't know whether it's Allen, Palmer, or Waghorn who needs to sit in that position. But I think we need to find a way of kind of whether we continue with somebody for a few games just to give them a chance to get there. I think that's kind of where I'd go with it.
On Allen, I'm a touch disappointed that in this 3-year cycle, it would have been really nice that Allen was sort of deemed to have not done well enough in season 1, and then in season 2 he would have had this nice redemption where you would have said he's done well and he stepped up and he is championship quality now. But the next stage of that for me would have been, we've brought in a better player and now he's like backup. And I do think it says a lot about this incarnation of the team that now you almost can't pick an 11 that doesn't include him in it. He's probably not in the first 11 that you would pick, but given that you know that there will be an injury or two somewhere on the pitch, he immediately is the player that fills in pretty much almost by proxy. That for me is a problem, I would say. But I think that it's like you say, I think it's a problem at that particular end of the pitch. Is I think I wonder whether I wonder to what extent we've put all of our eggs in the Casey Palmer basket, financially speaking, and if that's the case, should you have done so with a player that you're not sure about the fitness of?
Yeah, it was. Our transfers currently seem to be a punt most of the time. It doesn't seem to be any surefire kind of results with the people that we bring in. It's always, especially this summer, they've all been. Well, no, that's not true, because Panzo, I think, was pretty dead on to be. We knew he was a quality player. The rest were either young, and let's say Palmer was. We knew we needed an alternative, didn't we?
But that's Robinson's. That's Robinson's MO, isn't it? That's what he does. That's what he's always done. He's quite a scattergun approach to transfers, and some of them work out, but there's a hell of a lot more that just fall by the wayside and will one day form Paul Knowles' quiz question.
Yeah, and his approach, generally speaking, seems to be, AD, is there anyone that you've got left that you used to work with that hasn't either already joined or turned us down?
Yeah, or is not like 28, and it's like, okay.
Yeah, what's interesting with Palmer, like you say, I agree with you. I was surprised by his intensity when he came on. I was also really impressed with that one kind of flicked back heel, lobbed through ball that he attempted. That I thought that really nearly came off and would have been a kind of like viral video level kind of assist, because it was truly, truly magnificent. But I really think that number 10 position is critical for us, because I'm not sure how much you can play O'Hare there on his own, because he's such a unique type of player, and he also might miss games. And I think they want the flexibility of being able to play 2 up front or 2 behind. And I just wonder whether you've signed Palmer and he can't. You're saying that he's so drastically unfit. He's not played a lot of games in the last 3 years. Anyway, I'm saying the same thing as I was saying before. But it's an interesting signing for me, and I think weirdly there's this dual idea that we haven't gone backwards, but almost because we haven't gone forwards, inherently it means that we have gone backwards. But I think a lot rides on, if we're looking at other positives, and then possibly we look at kind of final positives and wrap up, is there's been a lot of talk about getting minutes in legs. And I think our next 2 games are Norwich away and
West Brom.
West Bromwich.
yeah, which I know that West Brom aren't having a great time of things, but I wonder whether to some extent you hope for the best in terms of results in them games, but maybe would have looked at them as games that would have been difficult anyway, and you hope that the minutes in the legs are then restored by that point, so that we've reached some level of sort of minutes in legs parity with some of the other teams, and that we're now match fit again. And then we take that match fitness into those 3 missed home games that presumably get rescheduled for midweeks. And those 3 games that we've missed are Rotherham at home, Huddersfield at home, and Wigan, which you sort of think you can repair the season if you win those 3 games, can't you?
Yeah.
I would have almost been more worried if you had to play those games now, where you're accepting that the team isn't quite up to speed, because there is a decisive difference, which is that there is a nominal idea that the team can get up to speed because of just getting minutes under the belt, and that might do us.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
think I think there's reason to be hopeful.
Yeah, I think a lot of it just comes down to rhythm and just how we haven't been able to garner any rhythm, like as a fan base or as a team or anything in this month. It's just been so fragmented, and you can't plan because you thought you're going to have a normal month, and then suddenly you're waiting like until the day before, and then games are getting called off, and then these inexplicable errors, which are part of football, but they kind of just compound. That feeling of your keeper then can't get some rhythm because you have to take him out, and and then you're desperate for wins, so you have to really fiddle with the team, because last night's team was a big switch, and you don't. I don't think that's ideal at this time in the season when you're really making big switches. You should get close to, like you say, the minutes and legs for your team, and you can start to build something that feels a bit more cohesive. So I think, like you say, now we've got the pitch, we can start playing more regularly. More if everything's laid out in front of us. O'Hare coming back will be big, I think, and then I hope what's happened in this month isn't kind of a terminal thing on our head where we can't get past it, and we just feel sorry for ourselves for the next 3 months, and causes us some real issues, because I still think we're pretty much the team that we were last year, like you say.
If you build it, they will come. That's basically my entire
Always.
And it has been built.
Yes.
There you go. So we're good. We're good until the rugby season starts again. Assuming that their season ever does start again.
Weird.
Terrible. Right, okay. Any final thoughts before we say goodbye to everybody?
Not from me.
Nothing.
There we go. It's been an absolute pleasure. Imogen, thank you.
Thanks, Joey.
Neil, thank you.
Thank you.
We will be back again whenever we're back. Bye.